these are just some thoughts that I had yesterday when I was organizing this talk, and as Ali just told you, it really very much built as a more interactive session. And of course, I will ask also the opinion of our colleagues. So now that you know us a lot better, you know the places where we work, you know what we do. Let me tell you some of the advice that I normally give to the PhD students and the postdocs that come to ICGB. And they are really, you know, the first advice is make yourself known on the internet, right? I'm sure you are all much more familiar than I am with social media, right? But there are some social media which are actually useful to put you in the map. So, for example, I make sure that my Google Scholar profile is up to date. There is researcher ID. Very much so, I encourage you all to register in ORCID. ORCID is a very useful site that actually keep tracks of many things. So it keep tracks of your name. Sometimes, you know, there are some countries, like for example in Croatia, right, where the woman, when she marries, she changes her surname to that of her husband, right? So if you find, you know, somebody and you simply maybe want to know what they have published and you search on PubMed, there is no way that the two things can go together, right? Because maybe the person has published, it happened for a PhD of mine, as Ursa Sribar, and when she married, she became Ursha Sujnar, right? PubMed, for PubMed, these two people are exactly the same, two different persons, right? There is no way to bring them together. So some of these social media like ORCID, not only they give you a unique identifier, and in some journals is actually compulsory to have an ORCID number. So the big advantage of these social media is not to post the photo of your holidays, you know, to post your TikTok movie or whatever, but they are becoming quite important for your scientific identity, right? Because one can go there and you can put in there all the grants that you have received, the experiences that you have made. For example, the workshop, you can put a link to the site of the workshop. You can put, of course, your publications. You can put also your abstract communications. And I can tell you that this is quite important because the thing is that, for example, for in ICGB, right, we have started looking at these kind of things, because when you receive 600 applications or 200 applications to come to an ICGB meeting or a workshop, you look at the CV and you look if these people have had some experience abroad, if they have already published something, if they maybe had the chance to present their work, even at internal meetings of the faculty. So, you know, maybe if you still haven't done that, you know, take care to put your scientific identity in these sort of more professional websites that are coming up. They're for free, don't have to pay anything. It really, you know, during the course of time, it will be helpful. So these are the ones I use. There are several others. We'll talk about some of them later. I also, although it is not really strictly tailored for scientific research, but this is something that I learned from my wife. She's also a biologist, but she soon decided she didn't want to do any research, and I agreed because she was not very good at it. So she went into marketing. Now she is the marketing director of a pharmaceutical company in Trieste. So she's been very successful. And she uses LinkedIn quite a lot. I mean, LinkedIn is a place where really companies, right, go and look for expertise that may be needed. So if you want to, you know, have your LinkedIn profile, I think it's also something that is quite good, and I strongly encourage it. Of course, the thing that the other advice that I give to PhD students when they come to ICGB for a short or a long time is to stay connected, right? You know us, now you have met Cambridge University, Queen Mary University, CSIC. Normally, all our organizations, and I think that you can add to that, we have an alumni page where people can register if they have participated in some of our meetings. They can register for newsletters, and in these newsletters, we really make a bigger effort in maybe right communicating if there are new calls coming up, if there are new opportunities coming up. So this is something, don't, once you have interacted with our organizations, and maybe you also know some people like Isa, Anna, all of us who right can be reached through an email. Just it pays to stay connected. All right. The other thing that is important, also make sure that this is something that, for example, you keep in mind. Let's say you have done this workshop on Fly, and it so happened, right, that the confocal microscopy just arrived, right? You can look through, for example, for the other meetings that we are organizing. There is going to be a meeting in 24, 26 of November, right, on fluorescence microscopy. And I'm not saying that you should all apply to go there, of course, right? But the fact that you have come to this workshop, you have started getting a little bit acquainted with fluorescence microscopy, now confocal microscopy. This can be actually used when you apply to participate in these courses. You can say, look, guys, my institute, wherever that may be, just acquired a new fax machine, a new confocal microscopy, but we don't know how to use it. Can I come to participate to the workshop that will be taking place, and that maybe you are providing some support, right, for participation to go there? And very often this is very well viewed upon, right? Because let me tell you very frankly, for example, we host these more kind of practical courses, right, on several topics, for example, fax. But the first thing that we check is that people, for example, in their residing institute have a fax machine, because it's very useful. It's very useless, right, to train somebody to use the fax machine when they don't have a fax machine in their institute. So try and leverage, right, your workshop, right? If you see that in some other institute they're organizing, for example, another course that could be important for fly Drosophila, make sure that when you write your application, you mention that you have been to this workshop, that you have some previous experience. And very often this will give you the edge over other candidates. So try, always keep in mind your experiences, and, present yourself like if, for example, Drosophila could be your future career path, right? Try connecting the dots, right? You're very young. You can now decide to do anything you want. This is basically your only advantage, right? Because you know very little about research, but you have this great advantage that I don't have anymore, that you have a future, you have a very long trajectory in front of you, career trajectory in front of you, and you can use all these experiences to start building your own, right? And you will see that the more you exploit this kind of attitude, and the more it will be likely that opportunities will arise, right? Because people like to build on a clear path, right? If I see somebody that has gone to a Drosophila course, and then one on plant breeding, and then another one on aquaculture, yeah, what is this person, what does he want to do in the future, right? Because at one point one has to decide a little bit, right, the direction. Again, be familiar. I'm using ICGB as an example because that's where I work, but basically you can go to all the website of Cambridge University, CIC, Queen Mary University, mine. There are hundreds of institutes. They provide services for free. For example, we have a service where we help people who actually have done a research project, maybe 1-2 year research project in their institute, and now they have to write up a manuscript. And for example, it happened to me like last year when I was in Rwanda. I was teaching a course on molecular genetics, but we actually spent 1 hour, together with the class, because they had done, they had a biocore small facility. They had done sequences, of malaria isolates from Rwanda, because now the problem in Rwanda is that malaria is coming back. And we actually spent with the data, together with them, deciding what could be figure 1, what could be figure 2, how would you like to present your findings and your results. So try and look around for these opportunities, because they can save a lot of time. This is something that actually Professor Alex mentioned yesterday to the PhD students at the University of Ibadan. There is now one of the big obstacles, especially in the South African countries, for example, of publishing, because publishing now very often requires that you pay a lot of money, and so that can be an obstacle. But now there are ways. The research landscape is changing a lot. There are ways that if you have some data, or if you have a paper that you want to submit, you can put it for free in bioarchive, and way that is not reviewed, but also but you still have the chance to, first of all, present it to the entire research environment, so people can comment on it. They can help you to improve it for eventual publication in a peer-reviewed journal. And then you have also other possibilities. So this is something that is very dear to my heart, because it's one of the first things that I started doing about 1.5 years ago when I became scientific coordinator. So I went to our affiliated institute in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and I discovered that they had this nice journal published by the on genetic research that actually is called Genetics and Applications. And this is a peer-reviewed journal, right? You do get peer review, but publishing there is completely free, right? There is no charge. You're not still indexed, for example, in PubMed and Medline, because we are working on that. But for example, is indexed and abstracted for EBSCO, EuroPub, CAVAPSA, Google Scholar, and all these. And this is important, right? Because at least, even though it may not have an impact factor yet or so, but you can still, manage to publish for free in a scientific journal that is peer-reviewed, and that in the early stages of one's career, could be quite important. So look around for these possibilities, right? Don't be, kind of inhibited by the fact that nowadays publishing in journals is becoming more and more expensive. This is the other thing that I would like to point out, right? I mean, now you have come here, you have listened to talks from all of us, scientific talks from all of us, but scientific talks, thankfully, a lot because of COVID, right, now are available also on the internet. We have more than 50,000, more than 550 movies on all the different topics that you may be interested in, that go from molecular biology, immunology, biotechnology, 50 collections of movies that are freely available, right? You can connect to them and you can listen. So you can search, for example, anybody that in the past has come to ICGB Trieste and that has accepted to be recorded as part of our seminar program, that has worked on Drosophila, right? And you can actually see and hear what, their lecture. And this is a great introduction, right? When you apply for a fellowship, and this, I think, is something that we also discussed in the past yesterday in our meeting at the university, right? It is a very nice way saying, oh, doctor, professor, so and so, I saw your seminar, right, on the YouTube channel of ICGB on Drosophila, and this is what I want to do, and this is the experience that I have, and this is the idea. It is a great way of basically improving your chances of being noticed, right? So do some homework, listen to some, you know, the recorded seminars, and then if you like it, you apply and you decide. And so, I mean, this is all I wanted to say, really. I think, I don't know if anybody else wants to add something, and then we open the floor for the questions. But this is how you start developing your network or your brand, as people in marketing call it.
Thank you so much, Prof, for this wonderful presentation. You really incite our interest in scientific community. Our number one concern is that we may have resources to carry out the research, but one of the key things that always obstructs us is microscopic aspect of it. You know, not all research institutes have confocal microscopy, electron microscopy, and other microscopes that we may use for microscopic study. What I don't know if there is a chance for us to build something that is cost effective, something that can mimic the same microscopy, same confocal microscopy or electron microscopy with other techniques. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So the thing is this. I mean, what we were saying yesterday. Don't underestimate the power of basic basic experiments that can be performed, I would say, now in most places, right, all over the world. There is always a way to obtain at least, and I'm saying this, at least some preliminary data, which will put you in a position of maybe accessing these advanced facilities that normally, right, would not be available, right? So for example, in ICGB, we have these short-term fellowships that are made exactly for, or the smart fellowships that are to promote South-South cooperation, that are made exactly to supply specific requirements that may not be available in your institute, right? And this is something that if you have some preliminary data, right, and you have something that really gives across the idea that if you go 3 months, right, in maybe, I'm saying, you know, the Zeiss reference center that I visited before coming here in Istanbul University, for example, it would be much easier to get the support, right, that is necessary. Or in some cases, and this is, look, I work in Trieste, this is what we do as well. I mean, some cases we prepare, right, the material, and then one can actually send it to an institute who will be able to measure it, for example, for cryo-EM, because, I mean, even ICGB cannot afford to buy a cryo-EM, right? If we remain in the field of microscopy, because the cryo-EM, right, cost like $2 million, and then it costs like $200,000 a month, a year to maintain. And so, I mean, sometimes you're also forced in trying to reach some facilities, but it is much easier, right, to achieve that result if you can present some nice and solid preliminary data, right? Using the resources that you have. And is yeah.
Just to add to the specific comment of imaging, it's also like we told the PhD students at the College of Medicine and Ibadan University yesterday. You need to talk to others as well. Try to collaborate. And for example, there is an African bioimaging consortium existing already. Again, I don't know which countries are part of it or which universities, but as he's saying, if you have some good data that shows an interesting question, and then you can write to them with a good project saying, I want to do this and I want access to confocal or EIM for that question, they probably have access. I mean, I haven't looked at it, but you can see it here. So just search. You need to do a bit of your own search to find out what is out there that may help you. And then the strongest your position is for the question you are proposing or the project, the higher the chances that they reply, they invite you, or that your grant is successful.
Vamos.
I have met different people that have interacted with me, and they want to start from the top. They always want to start, not everybody that interacted with, I can identify like 3 people, they intend to start from the top, and it's only the grade that starts from the top. If you want to really build something lasting, you just start little by little, and then you grow it off, and you keep going. Like for example, when we started, there was nowhere to actually know about the Drosophila before I went for my postdoc. And when I came, all the equipment I used there, I would not have started if I planned to start with the equipment I use in Brazil. The only thing that was available was spectrophotometer. And the spectrophotometer, the volume, the cuvette, the volume is maybe 2 ml, 1 ml, and the fly samples is also very small. So I had to improvise, look for a cuvette that can take maybe 300 microliter, maximum 600 microliter. So that if it is 300 microliter, you know your microplates is like 250 to 300 microliter volume. So I've been able to improvise to make sure that I get a cuvette that will fit into the spectrophotometer that I have. It was even a visible spectrophotometer. I could only do analysis that can be read in that region. So we started with that, and it took us 4 years to validate, to replicate some of the things that we did, and we published it. And then we began to grow gradually. After some time, we got UV visible spectrophotometer. Then we continued. And the data we got, we use as preliminary data to apply for different grants like ISN that gave us some money, and then the one with Dr. Alex. Gradually, we built, and then we got the first real-time PCR we got was like a big container. And then we got a better one on Studio 5. So it's always good to just start from where you are, and then you build gradually. And as you build gradually, you will keep going. But if you want to start from the top, it will take you time for you to generate binary data that you need to justify that you can actually do something. So that's just the bit that I can share. And also with respect to maybe improvising, maybe printing some microscopes or something, Professor Akaimo did mention that there is maybe somebody in Spain that was able to get some microscope, not too expensive microscope that they were using for experiments. I don't know if you can shed a little bit of light on that. You mentioned that somebody got something from Genetic Society of America, right, that they used to maybe get some microscopes. Even though the microscopes were for school outreaches, they can still be used maybe for experiments, I suppose.
What Amos is referring to is there is this Genetic Society of America,
had a little prize for research dissemination events utilizing Drosophila. And we applied for those, and we were granted one of those prizes. And it was like 2,000 US dollars. And that was enough to buy a dissecting scope with a camera. And we convinced the head of our institute to put another extra bit of money. So we got the dissecting scope, the camera, and a screen. So whenever we go for the schools, secondary schools or primary schools, we carry the microscope with us, and it's the whole setup is in there. So yeah, just find search for opportunities out there, and then try and be successful. I also said yesterday at this postgraduate college when we had a meeting with the students that people are willing to help. You just ask them with a nice project, and I bet you that you'll probably receive a positive answer in more occasions than you get a negative one, because people are willing to help.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma. This is my question. It is not really of career advancement. I think it's more of career startup. 2019, I went for a workshop like this with Professor Olapade in UI, and then the workshop was about neuroscience, and I got fascinated, and then I tried tilting my research towards that area. My research has been in that area. But the major problem we have here is starting a career hub. Okay, like now you are introducing us to Drosophila. Then another switch to Drosophila because that's where resources and opportunities are. Then maybe I'm doing research online where to do my postdoc, and I see it's diabetes. I enter diabetes again. Then later, I have a friend, they say in Brazil, this is what is going up now, is hypertension. I go to hypertension again. How do I build consistency? How do I know this is where I can focus on, and then I can break through? I don't know, maybe you get my question, sir.
Yeah, no. I think I understand. There is always the tendency, I think, in scientific research, and more so today than it used to be in the past, where people, they change focus depending on what is hot at the moment, right? If it's I'm not really sure I buy into that strategy. I mean, I know that some people use it very successfully, right? They when there is COVID, everybody works on COVID, then COVID disappears, and then we were working on diabetes, and then it will be something else, and you jump on something else. My experience is that but again, this is really my personal view, right? I'm not saying that it is the best view or it is the correct one, right? My personal opinion as a scientist, right? And to have a fulfilling career in science is to, really decide on what you would like to do on a topic that you feel comfortable spending all your energy, right, working on, and then just simply focus on it, right? And sometimes there will be the possibility of having many grants. Sometimes there will be a possibility of having a little less grants, right? But my personal view as a scientist, there is nothing more rewarding, right, than looking back 20 years ago and saying, what I knew at the moment, what I was doing at the moment, and how much I have progressed since then, right? So developing my own hypothesis for TDP-43 mediated neurodegeneration, right? My specific case, and perhaps not, jumping on the most fashionable topic in neurodegeneration that could be active or has been active, right? Every few years that comes up. But I mean, this is, in my opinion, this is very much a personal choice, right? And Isa.
Yeah, well, just to add that, and of course, it's also important to keep in mind that if you want to do something in these conditions, when someone is doing it already in better conditions, then you're going to be competing. So I think it's also good to be, again, realistic and feasible and think what may be missing. Like Lola mentioned today, integrins in neurodegeneration, there is not much known about that, for example. My husband is a very successful scientist, and he's always done the thing that no one was doing. You know, he started epigenetics almost when no one was doing. Now he's doing RNA. He soon, well, after a few years, he said, okay, epigenetics is kind of dying for me, for him, and I need something new. And then he did another completely new field. And he really is very good at looking what is there, like the big niche for you, that you don't have to compete with everyone else. You just get good and you are the leading on that. And I think if you have conditions also that are a bit more limiting compared to other labs, either you collaborate with those labs or think of something that is not done yet.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Dr. Isabel.
Thank you, Prof, for your talk. My question goes regards to research grants. Yeah, so I'd like to know, what do you look in research grants, especially from Africans, from sub-Saharan African states? Like, what do you want to see? What's that?
Yeah, so let me give you the proof why I'm not really qualified to answer this question. I have it here, and you'll enjoy it. Okay. So I have these three, you see these three folders, okay? This is the folder of applied grants, right? You scroll, you scroll, you scroll. These are the grants that I applied, right? Since, actually not so long, 2002, right? Keep in mind the number, all right? Now look at this other folder. These are the grants that these are still, I thought, you know, these are the grants that have been accepted, okay? So if I knew how to write a 100% successful grant, the ratio would not be that high, okay? It would be maybe hopefully the opposite way around. So writing a good grant, but actually writing a good grant is a skill, all right? First of all, you can certainly improve, all right? And the thing that I found more useful, and this is something that maybe some of you, will have the opportunity, is to score other people grants, right? When you score other people grants, you can start learning at least what are the basic mistakes, right? That, make a grant highly competitive or not. Mm-hmm. Now, of course, there are many tools. There are also many, and you can look in PubMed, right? There are many articles that actually, expand on this, what makes a good grant and what it doesn't. And of course, one can learn from it. But the thing that, just like doing experiments, you get better at it, right? The more you do experiments, for grants is exactly the same. You have to start applying, all right? Obviously trying to do your best job every time. You have to be prepared that a lot of time they will not be accepted, right? But I can assure you that as time goes by, you will certainly get better, all right? So this is really my my advice when writing grants, right? Take all the opportunities to maybe see, other grants by other people and think about, what made this a great grant and what didn't make it, right? Well, maybe because people don't have enough experience, maybe because they don't have enough preliminary data, but I think.
Thank you so much, Dr. Buratti. But Dr. Alex, you want to add something to it?
Really, really good points there. I think probably just to maybe give some specifics, what I would be looking for, and your specific question was framed around researchers from Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, right? I mean, this is why we're here. There are key principles that you can go away and look at the literature, and they'll give the same guidance and in great detail, granular detail that you can take the time to read. So we would always, aim to support hypothesis-driven research. You've got a clear idea, right? My idea is this, and it's clearly articulated. It's a clear idea, clearly articulated. It's feasible. If you start talking about, I've got a great idea and I want to do cryo-EM, okay, forget it, right? But it needs to be, I mean, even in the reality, it can be ambitious, right? But you can recognize the ambition. If this works, we'd love to take it this direction, right? You can't just shoot for the moon straight away. But, even just the simple things of clarity. This is what I want to do. And I want to do it in this way. This is how I want to figure this out, right? Realistically planned experiments depends on the scheme, how much space you have to describe the experiments, and how much detail. But try and be convincing that you've thought it through, that you know what the controls are, right? That you've done some of that thinking. Just make sure that comes across. What else? I mean, the thing, share between your colleagues, right? Ask your friend, ask your mentor, how does this read to you? And they can just say, I didn't understand this bit. I don't know what this means, right? Or this is a jargon or something, right? And even just those little helps can just ease the reader to go with you, right? We want to try and make it exciting and encouraging. You want the reader to think, yes, I'd really want to fund this, right? I want to know the answer to your big question. And I would try and make it, you obviously, just to reflect on a question earlier about which kind of career track to choose, you have to go with your passion, right? What do you care about? If you don't care about it, and you can't convince other people, who else is going to care to give you the money, right? So go with your passion. I would try and, if what we've talked a lot about interventions for disease, and everyone's kind of interested in that. It's great to understand the basic biology, but everyone, of course, for natural reasons, wants to think about interventions. But think about what the most plausible and realistic, impactful intervention. I completely appreciate the interest in sort of medicinal herbs and plant products and other things. In my experience, when that's been successful, it's been quite marginal, right? So you're asking people to give money for you to do your passion project, right? What you might otherwise do as a hobby if you had infinite, personal wealth, right? Why am I going to give you the money to do that when I might see an incremental advance? What might be the best way, the better way, even if it's not something that you could deliver next year, but it's building on something that would grow over 10 years. So, it doesn't have to be something you can take straight to the clinic, but it's going to be a tangible step in a direction that will make a big effect, right? But also that doesn't have to be the route. I'm just giving examples.
Yeah, just some basic things. I mean, also read very well, if you want to apply to a grant, read very well the instructions, right? and make sure that the grant plays on your strong points rather than on weak points, right? Because if it's a grant on clinical investigation, right, and you don't have access to a nearby hospital that can give you the samples, or right, then there is really very little point in applying because you will be discarded immediately, right? So, you know, these are the kind of. On the other hand, if it's a grant that says, you know, we prefer to fund the characterization of variants of unknown significance that, for example, we have been talking for a couple of days, right? Using a disease model system. Well, this is, you know, this is the great grant where you can apply because maybe you have the Drosophila system in-house, you have the possibility, maybe with a local clinic, to have variants of unknown significance that have never been investigated in European or North American populations. And this basically ticks all the boxes, right, for that grant. So read very carefully and then put all your effort in making the best job you can.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Buratti. We have a written question here. What advice can you give to someone seeking funded research visit or a kind of internship? Can one keep sending cold emails? And then why are PIs always interested in only early career with about 3 to 5 years postdoctoral experience?
So the first part is business oriented, right?
What?
No,
The first-
internship.
The internship.
Internship,
First is
research visit or
like
internship?
emails that you should send.
Should you keep sending cold emails to get those research visits?
Online.
Yeah. Okay. So cold emails, in my opinion, are never very successful, right? Because you really don't know if the other person at the other side of the email is looking for people or is interested in opening that kind of research line. My opinion, the best way is like we have been discussing. So to always make some prior research, and by prior research I mean not asking ChatGPT to describe what Emmanuelle Buratti is doing in ICGB, but actually taking the latest manuscript, right, reading them, and try to sort of approach in a way that it really shows that you are passionate for something that is being done in that laboratory at that particular time, right? So 5-year internships, that I don't think, unfortunately, those are not possible anymore. But you can start, for example, in many cases, it happened to a lot of our students, right? They maybe come for a couple of months, even for a very short stay, but you start to get to know the person. The labs, right, in the entire institute start to get to know the person. And then it may be down the road, 1 year later, 6 months later, there is a new opportunity that comes up. We will actually be the first one to contact these people and say, oh, look, you came for 2 months. We think you would be perfect for this, for applying to this maybe longer term fellowship. And this is, this is the way that people get these opportunities, by building up a little bit their connection with the institute they want to go, right? Which means, coming to these workshops, could even be just coming to this workshop, getting to know people, speaking to people. So this is, cold emails, because let me say very bluntly, each one of us, I guess, receive on an average 100 email every day, right? So cold emails have a very high risk of ending up in the unanswered folder. But
One more question.
Okay, okay, thank you very much. I'm Godfrey Mutuma Gitonga from Kenya. So my question is, if maybe I want to start a lab where I'm involving or I'm using the Drosophila, how can the faculty member facilitate me or help me to establish that kind of a facility? Thank you.
I think this is a perfect answer for example, Bros Africa.
What?
Neighbors in life.
Oh, see. So we had a discussion also with a colleague of yours about that. And maybe we should at some point in North Africa write a few points on how at least we can help you, but it can be others. The first thing is it's not just you isolated. So we look at the interest. I mean, maybe we can use Amos as an example. We look at interest not just of Amos. We'll talk to the vice chancellor, the deputy vice chancellor, or the provost. We discuss that Amos had other scientists that were interested in learning as well. And we try basically from top to bottom and also from bottom to top. So are there students that are interested on this? That's the first thing. So it has to be at the several levels that people are going to benefit. We're not coming just to put your lab and train you. We're going to explore first, are you going to be supported by those in your department, like Akaimo was saying, right? He applied for a little grant and then the rest of the institute put the other part of the money. So we discuss all those things. Because if we do a little bit, we come, we do a little bit, we go, we mentor you for a while, but in the end, you've got to work, like Amos was saying, there day by day with your head of department, head of a school, and so on. So that's the first thing. Where are you in Kenya? Where in Kenya? What? Okay, I don't, yeah. The other thing is, of course, there are many universities in many countries in Africa, but it's difficult for us to get to some of those, So if we have to fly the faculty that we would organize for you to help you form your lab and or train everyone else, we want it to be not too far from the airport. You will have to have a good in-the-house team to help you as well, like for the infrastructure, accommodation, all that has to be also, at least that the people that they are in to help. And then we would organize a workshop like this, for example, even a bit less sophisticated. We would start with really, really basic hands-on, and then we would open a call for this workshop, and we would organize the money together with you for that. We would call, and there would be many of the scientists that you've discussed in your university will be applying, and most of them will be selected if they have a good application. And then we also open it to other people, maybe in the surrounding country. Like here, we have Cameroon or Kenya, so to extend a bit. And then after that, so we help you. The workshop is happening in your lab, so we need to have a lab that works. So we often bring also the material. But yeah, you've got to do some of the work and have a lot of scientists involved, not just you. Yeah. But yeah, that for anyone basically. Yeah.
So much, Dr. Isabel.
And after that workshop, you're mentoring you like we've done. Then we have a relationship. For the grant application, then we would have to talk, see what it is. So, for example, I don't know how much grant applications are now in Africa. Are the governments having grants? Calls or the African, or the African science area. Yeah, so somewhere interesting. But yeah, yeah. Short, yeah. More leverage.
How can you start training this great?
Yeah.
People not government ministers. It must have started grassroots.
How did the countries, how did the government ministers expect to support any science if there is no support at grassroots? There has to be some money flowing in from the bottom up. And it sounds silly, right? Yeah. And you're laughing.
and I don't have the answers about how you do it, but something has to change. Something has to give, and some of the time, it has to start with we need this. This is what we need in order to progress. Maybe start with I don't know how much money comes from oil in this country, right? This is an oil-rich country, huh? Okay, I'm at the risk of making myself sound ridiculous, but if you find some kind of inroad to the government, start with a petition or something, and say, can we have 0.0001 of government revenue? Just start with something, and then but you can't. How are you going to do it otherwise? How literally how?
You know how much you have achieved so far. They have to see something. It's like you started like maybe 15 years ago. How many PhD students there was in Ibadan University? Nowadays, how many PhD students? But more importantly, how then these PhD students have done professionally? What has been their professional path? How much doing a PhD have helped these people and therefore the region to improve and to get better? And there has to be lots of numbers, I guess, really demonstrated that this is the way, no? Evidence based.
Trying to find some data, some numbers on how many people have left the brain drain, right?
Yeah.
How many people have left to pursue careers elsewhere because it's not tenable here or there or locally, wherever you are.
Yeah.
And then you need to make people think that it's a waste for your country, right?
Yeah.
And invest locally.
Thank you so much for that contribution, Dr. Ale. It's something I always like to talk about as well. So that's where industry and policy making have to overlap. So when it comes to policy making, dedicated funds for not just even scientific research in general, it's almost non-existent. But not just in Nigeria, it's similar across different countries in Africa. And we must always begin to introspect and look into ways that now where scientific research, industry, innovation comes in contact with policy making, but not politics. Because that those are two different things. And so many of us are upcoming scientists, and we have influence in our communities, and we can begin to think of ways we shouldn't work in isolation, like you have said. I know that in Europe, in other many Western countries, there are a lot of dedicated funding available where researchers can just get that, but many of us in Africa, we don't have access to something like that. We hardly ever do.
Yeah. But also, I wonder how the government don't wonder, like, they already have invested a lot of money and resources in you guys, from primary to high school, then to university, and then if you don't go on, if you don't keep doing these kind of things, it's a lot of money that has been invested.
Yeah.
What for?
Yes. So many of the key talents we get exports, we go outside the country to use the talents where you can get funding to support your programs. Yeah.
Yes, I mean, it's clear that there is not a law, but maybe Amos can answer this. I mean, there must be some labs that get grants from Africa, no? So how do they get them?
Let me just use this personal experience. I try not to comment on this, but since Dr. Professor Isabel
Asking.
to me, let me just comment on it. If you would like to hear about how I started, I'll just, of course, all of them are where I started. I started from my environment, from my space, using personal resources, personal funds here and there. Because I'm the type of person, I don't believe that I can just be doing things theoretically. I like to with my hands, putting things together. And I started little by little. I turned my office to a lab and then started one vial at a time. gradually before I now generated a small data that enabled me to apply for a local grant, the maximum of 250,000 naira. And then with that 250,000 naira, I bought a visible spec that I mentioned the other time. That enabled me to also generate a small data, and I applied to ISN. And then I got
What is ISN?
International Society for Neurochemistry or something.
Okay. So which one is local? Which one in Africa can you apply for?
Like the one I applied for is Thomas Basia.
Or?
Thomas Basia grants in our institution. So
what about at the level? I mean, there is council, an African Science Council, no?
Yeah, we also
that gets
have
money from.
We have TED funds, but it's usually given to experienced researchers.
So that's what I'm trying to find.
So we also have that. So my advice would just be that you don't wait until you have the opportunity before you start something. Just start from where you are, and then something that will show that you can use to show that, look, I was able to do this on my own. If I get this support, I will still be able to do this. Yeah. So just to start, and then eventually I got more grants. I also lost several grants that I never won. And it's actually those that applied that eventually will get. Yeah. If you stop because you didn't get, then you will never get. But you have to start from somewhere as Africa.
Thank you. The idea is that being a career means it is a lifelong job, right? Something.
Yes. Thank you so much. Like, I know a lot of people can relate, but that point just the pain points for many upcoming scientists. I've had a lot of people who are my peers and even other young people walk up to me and they're like, if I see the opportunity, and they are very talented people, but they don't want to stay in the country because they feel like the resources are not available, and no matter how hard they try, it just seems like the effort does not really yield. And so you see people who initially were even on ground, and then they change their mind at the end of the day when it doesn't seem like there's any progress. And so that's why a lot of young people, young scientists, young talents just decide to export the skills and the knowledge that they have and contribute to developed countries. But that's not a solution. It's a temporary fix as well. Yeah.
No, I just wanted. I remember an example of a scientist that we've been working with a little bit. But he works more with Trent in Africa, another charity that helps as well. He went out to train, but then he came back, and he worked for 7 years to develop a grant for the Wellcome Trust. And he got it, but it took him 7 years to get to the place where he thought the quality was good, plus all the training outside. So yeah, really tough in general. Yeah.
Yeah, just one or two more questions so that Dr. Kaimo can make his presentation. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Professor.
Yes. All right. Thank you so much, Prof, and thank you, the faculty. Okay. I'm Dr. Tunde from University of Ibadan. I have quite a number of questions, but I know we can't over-exhaust them, so I just decided to pen about 2 or 3 down. And then I think I'll start with my comment on what the coordinator talked about. Yes, the truth is that we have quite a number of talent in Nigeria, but I think from my own personal perspective that the issue is not that there are no policies or there are no some things that can be done, but I think the issue is implementation. And the practical example is, Prof, you mentioned that if we have some data of maybe some PhD work, research work, I could map that myself using spatiotemporal analysis. But the problem is when I generate those data, and I know all I need is just a week, I'll map it across the country. But the challenge is when I do that, do I have implementation? And then that discourages me because I've invested a lot, aside the knowledge, the input, the effort, the time. So it's just to like comment on what she said. The problem is implementation. It's like you mentioned of generating some data, maybe then you present those data to the government, to release some funds and all of those things. Science in Nigeria, I stand to be corrected, is political, in my opinion. So there won't be implementation. If you want, I need just 1 week. We could test run that. I will generate the data, but I can assure you the implementation is going to be poor. So why do I have to waste my time?
to add that maybe also you need to put some effort in identifying the right door to knock in. So maybe it's not just go to, apply to the big, but there might be people at the higher level than you guys that will be willing to help. And then you need to discover which is the right door that you need to knock in to get them on board with you. And it will not just be you on your own. You have to search for that as well, I think.
Thank you so much.
All right, so I'll just tie the two up. So the two question is talking of research, what do you think a global standard research should be? And what are the indicators, like the algorithms you check, the indices, to say, okay, this particular research is actually of a global standard? Should it be knowledge-based or should it be translational? Then the second question is, how do you view African research from your international perspective? And I need comment from every one of you. Thank you.
10 questions.
It's a very interesting question. I like that. I think you're asking the question around what would be a global standard for science, and I think that's a perfectly way to find a way to phrase the question. The universal standard for science is, in my mind, and I think this has been the case since forever, is the basic tenet of science is it needs to be reproducible, right? So I've been talking with many of you over the course of the last couple of days and said this numerous times. You develop an assay that works for you and is reproducible and is quantifiable, right? Because then you can, and if you are publishing this sort of thing, you need to be able to describe it in great detail so that someone else, completely independent, can reproduce exactly what you've done and come up with the same answer, right? So it doesn't matter what it is. That's a basic definition of quality science, is that someone can come along and reproduce, right? Not that everyone will, right? And that's also another ground truth. I've forgotten part of the question. I review, yeah. Oh, a second part of that same question was, should it be translational? And absolutely not. It doesn't have to be. If you can get, the thing is, a difficulty is, how do you interest other people, right? How do you get noticed? How do you make it interesting to other people? And that's not something I particularly have an answer to, because everyone has their own interests. And we've said before, you should follow your own passion. Everyone should follow their own. There'll be trendy topics. There'll be that come and go, right? But it doesn't need to be translational in any means to be quality science. Truly the best science that's ever been done is discovery, right? You're discovering something for the first time, brand new knowledge, and that's sort of basic discovery science. Way before, is rock solid. Before treatments are found for this, that, or the other disease. I mean, you read about the ancient Romans used to get dogs to lick their wounds, right? Because they thought that was going to help cure the wound. We wouldn't do that these days, but that was the treatment standard at the time. But it's not reproducible. It's not foundational quality science, right? So it doesn't need to be translation. It's another message I really want to drive ahead. Just find out some fundamental biology, whether it's how plants grow or whatever. It doesn't matter. But and then how do we view African science? I think the shame of it is that we aren't exposed to enough. So I think I would struggle to give a coherent answer on that, because we don't know. We're not exposed enough globally. What we do see is perfectly sound. The impact is difficult to say, and it's sort of each thing by its own merits, right? I think there's some.
Yeah, I just want to add two things. One is that I agree that I think Africa can do great science. work needs to be put on. So and we see that the talent is there and the passion is there, and when it is done properly, it's very good quality. So I think that's the first thing. The second thing for me, regarding one thing that maybe is more negative, is that you are very protective of your country science or your own local science. You don't collaborate well with other within Africa or within your country even. You want to collaborate with the Western world a lot, but not so much with yourself, and especially with other countries. You know, we often try to get things exchanged between labs in different countries because we created a fly community over all Africa, and it's very hard. And I think that's a problem that needs to change as well. And that's again, you guys changing that, definitely. There was a third point that I can't remember now, but maybe I'll say it later. Yeah.
But I think that that aspect of being noticed, like I don't know how many of you, for example, apply or send an abstract to conferences in Europe or in the States with your work. Because, you know, it's not, I have to say, it's not very often that when I look at an abstract list, I see an abstract from, you know, Nigeria, from anywhere, from Kenya, from very rarely. And I'm sure that there's a lot of work being done, at least in our area. So sometimes for you to send an abstract, you don't even, it's a poster in a conference. Nowadays, you don't even need to go to the conference if you don't have the money, because there's a lot of participation online, and you don't need to have the result of your life or a huge result. It might be an idea that you have already started to develop, and then, so, you know, you should start also make yourself notice that you're doing things.
To everyone. Professor Amos, I want to start with you. Professor Amos. Yeah, so my question goes to everybody. So it's in two sets. So the first thing is, at your level of research, what are your major limitations, and how do you overcome them? Yeah, level of research. What are major limitations? How do you overcome
Yes, money, grants, then also overcoming bureaucracies within the system. So, for example, when you are young as an early career researcher, you have an idea and you want to carry out something, and then maybe somebody discourage you, or there's no space constraints, and some other things, or administrative tasks as a young lecturer. So my brain is wired to think of alternative, to think beyond, because every system has a mindset. Every organization has a mindset that is not written in their books, unwritten mindsets. In some places, for example, they will not give you students to supervise until you are a professor or until you are a reader. So you have to learn how to navigate and still get what you need. Is that okay? Without fighting, without confronting anyone. You have to you have to just be smart, understand the mindset of the system, and come up with a superior mindset to navigate through.
Thank you, Prof. Well, you talked about grants, and I think all of you agreed on the importance of grants. I'm trying to say that, okay, I think I want to marry winning grants and career. Like, I want to sort of marry the two together, because I think, like what I told of that, I've discovered that majority of these funding bodies, they have thematic areas or they have special areas where, let me say, they like to fund. And I know cancer, antimicrobial resistance, then food security. And my passion is, okay, let me say okay, truly, I'm actually passionate with female fertility and medicinal plants. But I have to be realistic with myself. There is assisted reproductive techniques, especially IVF, that can bring about the solution. Will people really, or will people really fund the research? I don't know whether you
Okay, I
understand
understand what
me.
you're saying. I started my career as a toxicologist. I'm a toxicologist. And then reproductive toxicology was my area of specialization up to my PhD. And then I published several papers in that area. After some time, a reviewer asked if the toxicity that we reported was centrally mediated, if it has effects maybe on the brain, if it affects the brain. So I carried out a small study and I looked at the brain and I found it interesting. So and you know there's a link between the brain, the reproductive system. So just hold on. So then I applied for several grants in the area of my interests that I did not get. The one I get was small. Are you following me? And also a particular one that is actually specific to neuro. So I now link reproductive toxicity with neurotoxicity. The brain gonadal axis, there is a link. Are you following me? And I got a 3-year grant to do my work. I was still doing my own area of interest and I got resources, equipment that can be used for everything. After some time again, I saw opportunity to also collaborate with somebody with respect to cancer. How is cancer relating to my toxicology? Of course, there are several environmental carcinogens. Are you following me? And I link up with that, and we also got a 5-year grant. My reproductive toxicology and other areas are still ongoing with my students, and we also got grants and equipment for what we got the money for. So just try to be flexible and try to link what you are doing with what they are asking for. This fertility that you talk about now, you can relate it to if the grant has to do with the environment. There are several environmental factors that can induce infertility. So you just have to look for how you can link what you are doing with what they are asking for. And this person that is telling me just got a grant, the Laureate grant. This same person. So, and because you have got one, there is no way you keep getting. Is that okay? So congratulations, Amida. So once you see any opportunity, try and look for where you can, how you can apply it.
Adapt to the call.
Adapt to the call.
We all have to accommodate. We all do. We all have to accommodate because the policy changes. So, they want us to invest a little bit more on this and being within our own sort of field of research, but we all need to accommodate. Anytime I apply for a grant, I have to include something else that I know the funding body more interested, within limits.